Could you survive a tsunami on a ship? What the survivors did? You are standing on the deck of a small ship, coffee in your hand, when the water starts to leave. Not the tide. The tide takes 6 hours. This is happening in 90 seconds. The bay empties like someone pulled a plug at the bottom of the ocean, and fish are flapping on wet sand where deep water used to be. Somebody near you laughs and points because it looks strange, almost funny, and that person will be dead in 11 minutes. Out past the harbor mouth, the sea is standing up. A captain 40 feet from you has his hand on the throttle, and in the next 30 seconds, he makes a decision that decides whether you live. Turn toward land, toward the dock, toward what feels safe, or point the bow at the wall of water and drive straight into it. Everything in your body is screaming to get to shore, and everything the ocean knows says your body is wrong. The real question is not whether the wave is coming, it is coming. The question is what you do next, because that is the only thing that has ever separated the people who walked away from the people who did not. A harbor looks like shelter, and for almost anything the sea can throw at you, it is. It was built for ordinary weather, for wind and swell and storms, but it was never built for this. When a tsunami arrives, the harbor stops being a refuge and becomes the most dangerous water for miles. Out in the open ocean, a tsunami is almost nothing. The water rises and falls a few feet over several minutes, and a ship above it might not feel a thing. The wave can move at the speed of a jetliner, 500 miles an hour, carrying more energy than you can picture, and a sailor on deck would swear the sea was calm. But the wave is dragging all of that energy along the floor of the sea. When the floor rises toward a coastline, the wave has nowhere to put its power except up. It slows. It stacks on itself. A swell you could not even see climbs into a cliff of moving ocean, sometimes over 100 feet tall, and it aims that cliff at the shallowest, most enclosed water it can find. Which is the harbor? Where you are standing. There is a reason for the word. Tsunami is Japanese, and it means harbor wave. Centuries ago, fishermen would row out to sea, feel nothing unusual all day, and row home to find their village smashed to pieces. The wave passed under them like a ghost, and only became a monster where the land squeezed it. They named it after the only place they ever saw it do harm. So when the alarm sounds, and every instinct tells you to run the boat back to the dock and get on solid ground, understand what that instinct is really telling you. It is telling you to steer into the one place the ocean has been aiming at for 10,000 years. And that instinct wins, almost every time. That is the first fatal mistake. But it is not the only one. To understand what actually keeps you alive, you have to meet a man who did the exact opposite of what his body screamed at him to do. March 11th, 2011. The largest earthquake in Japan's recorded history has just torn open the sea floor off the northeast coast. On a tiny island called Oshima, 64-year-old Susumu Sugawara knows exactly what is coming, because he has spent his whole life reading this ocean. Everyone around him runs for the hills. That is the right move on land. Get high, get inland, get away from the water. If your feet are on the ground, you do not go toward the sea for anything. But Sugawara runs the other way. He runs down to the water, to a wooden ferry named Sunflower that he has captained for 42 years, starts the engine, and points it straight out to sea. Think about what that takes. Every cell in his body is telling him the sea is death, and he is driving into it on purpose. As he passes his other boats, he says goodbye to them out loud. He cannot save them all. He can save one, and only if he gets it deep enough, fast enough. This is the move the survivors make, not toward shore, but toward the horizon. A ship is safest in deep water, where the wave is still just a swell, and in the most danger tied to a dock, where that same swell becomes a hammer. And then Sugawara sees it. He knows big waves. 42 years at sea, he has seen swells 5 meters high, taller than a house. What stands up in front of him now is 4 times that. A wall of ocean the height of a 6-story building, and he is in a wooden boat alone driving toward it. Here is where most people would turn broadside, try to run, try to escape sideways. And that is the mistake that kills you, because a wave that size will roll a boat that turns its side to it. Sugawara does the one thing that works. He keeps the bow pointed dead into the wall and pushes the throttle all the way down. "I talked to my boat," he later said. "I said, you've been with me 42 years. If we live or die, we'll be together." And then he climbed. But this is where the story should have ended. He drove up the face of the wave like it was the side of a mountain. And just when he thought he had reached the top, the wave grew. It got bigger under him, still rising, and the crest came down on the boat again and again. He shut his eyes. He felt the whole world tilt and spin. He was certain it was over. And then he opened his eyes, and he could see the horizon again. He was on the back side of the wave. He had gone up one side of a 6-story wall of water and down the other, and Sunflower was still floating. But a tsunami is almost never a single wave. It is a series. And the next one was already coming. He met it the same way. Bow in, throttle down, climb. He cannot even remember now if there were 4 waves or 5. He stopped counting. He just kept the nose pointed into each wall and drove over it, one after another, until the ocean finally went quiet. And then it did go quiet. The sea flattened out like glass, the way it does after a tsunami has spent its fury. And Susumu Sugawara was alive, alone, floating in deep water, having done the impossible. But now he turned to look back at his island, and there was nothing to see. No lights. Total darkness, where 3,500 people lived. He stayed at sea until dark, pumping water out of his flooding engine room, not knowing if his home still existed. The only thing he could steer by was the glow of fires burning in Kasenuma, 3 miles across the water. He used a burning city as a lighthouse to find his way home. That is what surviving looked like. Everything that saved him happened in the first 60 seconds. Before the wave was even visible, in the moment, he chose the deep water over the dock. But to understand why that choice mattered so much, you have to know what happened to the people who made the other one. Sugawara was not the only one who tried to save his boat that day. Others had the same idea. They untied their boats and pointed them out to sea, chasing the same deep water that saved him. They did not make it. Some started too late, and that is the cruelest rule of all. You go to deep water only if you have the time to get there. If the wave is close, if the minutes have run out, driving toward it is no longer courage. It is a death sentence. The survivors were not just brave. They were early. That is the razor-thin line. The same decision saved one man and killed his neighbors. And the only difference was 60 seconds and how far offshore they got before the wall arrived. And then there were the ones who never left the harbor. The ones who did what your body is begging you to do. They tied their boats tighter to the dock, or climbed off and ran for shore, and left their vessels in the exact water where the wave was about to focus every ounce of its power. Those boats were not just damaged, they were erased. The wave lifted them over the breakwaters, carried them half a mile inland, and dropped them onto rooftops and highways. In one town, it threw 17 large ships and around 1,000 smaller boats onto the land like toys. Now put yourself back on that deck, because this is the whole thing in one moment. The harbor is behind you, safe-looking, close, everything in you pulling you toward it. The open ocean is in front of you. Dark, terrifying, the last place on earth you want to point a boat. Everything you feel is wrong. The safe-looking water is the kill zone. The terrifying water is the way out. The people who lived are the ones who could override every instinct in their body and drive toward the thing that scared them, while there was still time to reach it. If you are ever caught at sea when a tsunami warning comes, the rules are simple. If you are already in deep water, stay there. Do not go back to port for anything, because the wave you cannot see becomes the wave that flattens the harbor. If you are near shore and there is time, run for open ocean, 600 feet of water beneath you or more, and wait it out. Keep the bow into the waves. And if there is no time, get off the water and get high, the highest ground or the highest deck you can reach, and hold on. But notice what every one of those rules has in common. Not one is about strength, not one is about luck. Everyone is a decision made early against instinct. Susumu Sugawara climbed a 6-story wall of water in a wooden boat, older than most of the people watching this. And when you ask him about it, he does not talk like a hero. He talks like a man who was very small in front of something very large and got to come home anyway. Because that is the truth underneath every survival story on this water. You do not beat the ocean. Nobody beats the ocean. The wave that flattened those towns carried more power than every engine humanity has ever built. And it did not know you were there. It did not aim for you. It did not spare you. It simply passed through, the way it has for as long as there has been water on this planet. And the only thing any of us has ever been able to do is read it a few seconds sooner and point the bow the right way. The people who came home were no braver than the ones who didn't, and no luckier. What they had was a head start of a minute or two and the nerve to spend it driving away from shore while everyone else ran for it. That thin margin, that single turn of a wheel toward the deep water instead of the dock, is the whole difference between the ones the sea let go and the ones it kept. The ocean will always be bigger than you. The only question it ever really asks is whether you were paying attention. If this pulled you in, there's another story waiting for you right now about a wave almost nobody has heard of, one that climbed higher than any tsunami ever recorded. It is on screen. Go find out how anyone survived it.